today we're going to be talking about a bunch of volume 1s I've read throughout the past few months. I feel like I've been working on this video forever, reading the volumes, and then every time I'm like, okay, I have enough volumes to talk about, a new one comes out, so I want to delay the video until I read that one so I can talk about it. But I've decided we need to stop. I need to just talk about the manga that I've read. And yeah, so let's just go ahead and get started. I've done many of these videos, so you know the drill. The first volume 1 I read for this video was Ultra Heaven. So this takes place in a future where drugs are basically readily available for anyone, psychedelic drugs specifically, and these are available at establishments that are called pump bars. And basically you can escape reality through whatever drug of your choice. All the drugs do different things to your mind. They can make you feel certain emotions or sensations. And the bars are also run by medical professionals who are kind of experts at getting people the right drugs to elicit whatever emotion or experience they would like. But of course, as with any addiction, sometimes that's not enough and people look for something more. And we follow Cub, a character named Cub, and he's obviously addicted to the psychedelic drug experience. He is constantly looking for new ways to get high, new experiences, and one day he's approached by a man who talks about this illegal drug that is crazy and does a bunch of things that have never been seen before. But soon reality and dreams begin to blend together, and that leaves Cub questioning what is even real. So I've read one other work by Keiichi Koike, and it was also very psychedelic. And while I did definitely enjoy the art in that, and I enjoyed some of the short stories, I found some of them incredibly difficult to follow. I do not have that problem with this. I thoroughly enjoyed this volume. The art is just breathtaking, and obviously when you have a manga about psychedelic drugs, it's really cool when the art is also very psychedelic. So let me see if I can find an example for you. So here's a good example. We see lots of eyeballs, lots of strange things happening. Basically just Cub's experience when he's high on these psychedelic drugs. The futuristic world we're presented with in this volume is also quite interesting. Obviously you have the bars where people go to get psychedelic experiences, but also there's like these virtual reality headsets that are considered normal. Basically any excuse you can have to escape reality is present in this manga. So you'd think in a world like this, any drugs would be legal, but actually there are these like health police that go around arresting people who are on illegal drugs or suspected of using illegal drugs. And I'm not quite sure what drugs are considered illegal yet, considering so many of them are illegal. But these health police go around arresting people who are on illegal drugs and basically forcing them to take these prescription medications, which makes profit for pharmaceutical companies. And I think we'll learn more about this in later volumes, but that aspect of this manga is so fascinating to me. You'd think in a world like this, the drug companies would be making tons and tons of money on these now legalized psychedelic drugs, but they also want to make, of course, more money and forcefully prescribe medications to people. Of course, anytime a manga tackles the idea of blending dreams and reality, I will love it. So I'm very happy to continue this manga. I was a little wary, like I said, because I didn't love the other work by this author that I read, but this one was definitely up my alley, and I can't wait to read more. This will be a 3-volume series in total. The next volume 1 I read was Pet Shop of Horrors. So in this manga, it's about a pet shop that's run by a mysterious man here named Count D, and he sells normal pets, as you would expect, but also some weirder pets. These specialty pets come with guidelines that must be followed or else really bad things happen, kind of like Gremlins. So this is definitely an episodic manga. Each chapter kind of follows a different situation, a different pet given to a different owner. Some of them are darker than others, but all of them are quite weird since the pets all have these human qualities. Some of them just straight up look like humans. Some of them look like human-animal hybrids, but as you can expect, that creates weird and dark situations, definitely. Because of the episodic nature, this didn't feel like a manga that was best read in one sitting. I definitely would not feel like I need to binge read the series, but I did enjoy reading one chapter in between some other things. Our main character here, Count D, is an interesting character because it seems like he would just be this mysterious, stoic person who just gives people mysterious pets and demands that they treat them right, but actually is kind of silly, and I actually really enjoyed that. There's also a recurring character who is a cop, and he's kind of investigating this pet shop because he's heard some strange things that happen there, and him and Count D kind of have a funny relationship because the cop is very serious and wants to know what's going on, and Count D is quite silly, and so the things don't really go the way the cop wants them to. As with any episodic manga, some of these stories were more interesting than others. I found myself enjoying the darker series present in the first half of this volume a little bit more than the not lighter series. None of the chapters are light, but the ones in the first half were a little bit darker, and so I enjoyed those ones more, but I enjoyed all of the chapters for the most part. I do think this volume is a little expensive. It's $25 for this paperback. It's a well-made volume. 7C's volumes are always nice, but it does feel kind of steep, but with the way things are going, this is kind of the new norm. But I did enjoy this volume, so I will be continuing on for sure. I do love this cover. It's very beautiful, so I can't wait to see what else happens, what other strange creatures are presented in situations, stuff like that. So definitely another one I will continue. The next volume one I read was Farewell, My Odin here. This is a Viking-inspired manga. It follows a young boy who is found half-starved, and he has these two baby wolf companions. He is taken in by a priest who basically raises him, tries to educate him, but one day the village they live in is attacked by Vikings, and this basically kickstarts a need for revenge in our main character. So I didn't hate this volume. Obviously it has a lot of influence from Vinland Saga. We even have a little note about Makoto Yukimura appreciating this manga. The art style in this is not my favorite. It's very sketchy, so it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on in some panels. And I don't think the printing of this helped. This is a very cheap volume, not just in price, but I mean like quality-wise. It's very cheap. When I was reading, the ink was coming off on my fingers, and so I'm sure the printing does not help figuring out what's going on in the panels, but some of them were very difficult to figure out. I do think the sketchy art style goes well when you're trying to make a character intimidating. If you draw them with very dark lines, they become more intimidating. So I think that was a good reason to have the sketchy art style, but it didn't change the fact that some of the panels were difficult to read. However, even without knowing the volume count, which is 3 volumes, I could tell this was going to be a short series. This volume is very small, and we have kind of an extended introduction with our main character and his being taken in by this priest in this village and the village being attacked. So it's kind of an extended introduction, but by the end of the volume, we're already having the main character confront the person who was responsible for the attack on the village. And so I have no idea what you're going to do for 2 more volumes, but it just felt like everything was going way too fast. In a story like this, I want time to breathe and reflect on things. That makes things more emotional, in my opinion, when you're able to have a character sit down and think about what has happened to them, and that definitely does not happen here. It's all action, action, action after the first introduction part, like I said. In my notes, I wrote that the main villain's backstory was interesting enough, but at this point, it's been like a month or 2 since I read this volume, and I can't even remember the main villain's backstory, so that probably wasn't as true as I thought it was originally. I think if you really enjoy revenge stories, you might like this. I wouldn't say if you love Vinland Saga, you will like this, because I love Vinland Saga, and I did not love this. I thought it was okay. At this point, I'm just looking for manga that I feel will leave a lasting impression with me, and even though this is going to be a 3-volume series and that's it, I just don't have any desire to continue because I don't think it won't be memorable to me. That is actually a problem for me with a lot of these short series. People say, oh, it doesn't take very much commitment, which is true, but then it's not going to be memorable for me. I want a long series where we get time with the characters, they have moments of reflection, and there is a story progression that you can follow over many volumes. So of course I wanted to give this one a try because I loved Vinland Saga so much, and you never know, there are some short series that I've loved, but this one was not one, so I probably won't continue. The next volume one that I read was Rozen Maiden. So I'm going to give a fair warning right now. I didn't actually finish this volume. I got through about 75% of it, and I could not do it anymore. I was so bored. But basically, we follow a boy who is in middle school. Apparently, he had some kind of issue in school, kids bullying him or something like that. So now he is a shut-in. I say apparently because it says that on the back, but in the actual manga, I don't remember them talking about that as a reason for him to be a shut-in. Maybe I missed it because I wasn't paying enough attention because I wasn't having a lot of fun reading this manga. But basically, anyway, one day a mysterious box shows up and in it contains a talking doll. And our main character is basically forced into a contract with the doll, and they supposedly enter into a battle royale type of scenario with other dolls that can talk. And again, I say supposedly because there's very little battling going on, at least in this first volume. Now, I have never seen the anime that was so popular, and that's why this got released. And I'm not sure, maybe I would have liked this better if I had seen the anime. Maybe I would have felt differently, but this was extremely difficult for me to get through. So I read some reviews on Goodreads, as I usually do, and it's kind of interesting because a lot of the negative reviews talk about our main character, who is absolutely horrible to his sister, and that's why they didn't like the manga. And while I agree, the main character is absolutely horrible to his sister basically takes care of him. Their parents are who knows where. She is in high school, so she takes care of him. She completely forgives anything he does, which is a lot. He's very rude to her, just calls her names, doesn't have any respect for her. And so I can understand why that would be a main complaint for people. I actually didn't have a problem with that because to me it was very obvious this is a very young boy who has had some traumatic experiences at school, and so he's taking it out on the only person who is around him. And so I understand it. I do have issues with the sister character who, like I said, is just completely forgiving, doesn't say anything, doesn't scold him for anything he does to her. But I will say that is not a problem I had with this manga. We see that June, our main character, he can show kindness to others. He shows kindness to the dolls. So we know that he's capable of it. He's just acting out towards his sister. I am much more frustrated with the fact that she never defends herself rather than the fact that he is being mean to his sister, who is basically sacrificing part of her life in order to take care of him. My problem with this manga, actually, is the fact that it really has, like, no dolls battling. Seven Seas is so good at advertising a manga on their synopsis as one thing that technically might be true, but actually is not a big portion of the manga. At least so far. Maybe later on it goes more into dolls battling each other, but they advertise this as like a battle royale thing, and that is just not what this first volume is. It's a lot of the main characters just hanging out together, talking, which I don't think is a horrible thing. I think it would probably be good for June and his character development to just realize that he can make friends who will not hurt him, but it just wasn't what I signed up for. I signed up for Battle Royale with dolls, and that's just not what this is, at least so far. So yeah, like I said, I couldn't even finish this volume. I was so not engaged with it. So obviously I will not be continuing. Maybe I'm just not the primary audience for this. I don't know. I didn't love the art either. So I don't know. Not for me. Next up, I read the highly anticipated The Climber by the author of Innocent and DRCL. So this is a sports manga. We follow a gloomy boy who recently transferred to a new school. Because of his antisocial tendencies, he is teased by his classmates a lot. And one day he is told by one of his kind of bullies that if he wants to be left alone, he should climb the school. And he does that. And of course it's a sports manga, so he immediately falls in love with the idea of climbing, the feeling of climbing, and he reluctantly joins the climbing club in school. The character who basically challenged him to do that is also in the climbing club, so that's why he challenged him to do that. This was a good first volume. I do have a few complaints. First of all, this is very highly hyped up. It has a lot of hype, which I don't think yet it deserves, but it is a longer series. We've only read the first volume, so I'm not expecting anything amazing from a first volume of a sports manga, but I do have a few complaints that I want to talk about. First problem I have is probably the most minor, like it's very easily ignorable, but I do feel like some of the dialogue is kind of strange and unnatural. There's one teenage character that uses a lot of slang, which I hate when manga that translators or localizers or whatever add slang into the dialogue. It just doesn't ever work well in my opinion. But he's a teenager, so I guess it makes sense. But there are also just moments of dialogue that don't feel natural, like that doesn't seem like something someone would say. There was just a few moments of this, so it's not anything huge, but I did notice it, which I normally don't notice it when people complain about the dialogue unless it's really, really obvious. So the fact that I did notice it is not great, but like I said, really minor in terms of everything else. What I do feel was very distracting was anytime there's like an emotional situation, some of the characters are just really, really over the top with how they react. I'm hoping I can describe this in an adequate way, but basically there are some scenes where the characters react so strongly, it just doesn't feel like they need to react that way. Like sometimes there's dangerous moments, and that makes sense for the characters to be as emotional as they are, but other times it's just the way the panels are drawn, like how detailed they are. Like the reaction scenes are so overdrawn. It's clear they're not supposed to be comical, but I laugh because of how overdrawn the panel is and how strong the reaction is to something that doesn't seem like it deserves that reaction. You know, when you're watching a sports anime or reading a sports manga and you have little moments of side characters reacting to something that happened, which might seem like they disrupt the flow of things. It's basically those moments, but they are incredibly overdrawn. Like, it's not that deep is what I want to say. We don't need to be reacting like our entire view of reality is changing because one guy was able to reach farther than you thought he could when he's climbing. That's basically it. I imagine this might change as the story progresses, and I've noticed that this doesn't quite have the like ethereal art that we see from Sakamoto in like Innocent and TRCL, but this was a different time, one of his earlier series, and it is a different like schedule for this manga, I believe, so that's probably why. So that's it for my complaints. They're really not huge. It had nothing to do with the writing or anything, just minor things that were distracting to me while reading. But besides that, this has all the elements of a sports manga that I enjoy. Our main character is one of the sports manga protagonists that doesn't have any experience with the sport, but realizes that he is very gifted. He has an immediate connection to the sport. In particular, he likes the idea of solo climbing because he always wants to be alone, and so solo climbing, it's only you and the mountain and the sky, and he is very enamored with that idea. He also kind of has a mysterious backstory a little bit, some kind of situation with the school that he transferred from, so I imagine we'll learn more about that. I think that has something to do with why he wants to be alone all the time. And of course, as with many sports manga, we have a really great rivalry in here. The character that I mentioned earlier that challenges, I should really talk about their names. That challenges Mori, our main character, that challenges him is also a member of the climbing club, and they kind of have a rivalry that grows into a friendship a little bit. It has the classic rivalry feel of they're antagonistic with each other, but that drives them to do better, to be better at their sport, and I eat that up every time. I think the last thing I want to say is that when I was doing research for this manga, you can see there's lots of names on here, and it seems like the first 4 volumes have like 4 different writers or something like that, or first 5 volumes, I can't remember exactly, but the early parts of the manga have different writers, and then after that it's just Shinichi Sakamoto himself writing the manga. So it'll be interesting to see if I can notice when that shift happens, when Sakamoto completely takes over the writing for the manga. If it gets better, if it changes at all, I will be interested to see that. But I probably won't read any more of this until the entire series is out. That is just how I prefer to read sports manga and manga in general, but definitely sports manga. So that's probably what I'll do. But I did enjoy this manga, despite the fact that it had flaws. I'm very much interested in continuing. The next volume 1 I read was a big one. This was Drifters Omnibus 1. And this is basically a historical sci-fi manga, kind of. Basically, we have a bunch of different significant warriors in history, and they are taken from their time and put into this world, this fantasy world, and basically told to attack things. They basically are tasked with helping these elves defend themselves from this king thing. Listen, I didn't love this. This was a lot of action and action and action and action. And I like action series, but only if I care about the characters. And these are just historical figures. Maybe if I knew more about the various historical figures, I would care more about it. But I don't want to read pages and pages and pages of battle action when I don't care about the characters. What I like about action scenes is when you feel for the characters, you want them to be okay and to succeed to win the battle. But this, I couldn't care less. I do not care. Even the weird mix of sci-fi and fantasy that's going on, they're in this fantasy world. I don't care about it. There are elves that need to be saved. There's nothing there. I don't care. I did read Hellsing a couple years ago. I loved Hellsing. I will say, as much as I don't love the deluxe editions, it was very hard, again, to follow what was going on in these little tiny volumes. Like, this is the same size as a regular Seven Seas volume, just really big. Whereas Hellsing, of course, I read that in the deluxe editions. So that was really easy to see what was going on. And I feel like I like his art a lot better when it's huge and on a big page. So yeah, this is one of those, like, style over substance. Let's draw some cool characters being badass without actually developing any kind of emotional storyline, in my opinion. So yeah, didn't care for this. Will not be continuing. I don't know if it's still on hiatus or not. It's been on hiatus for a long time, but yeah, didn't care for this. And the last volume I have to talk about for this video is Gene Bride. So this is a sci-fi manga, technically. We follow our main character Ichi, and she basically is completely sick of her misogynistic workplace environment and general society. So she's really mad about all that. And then one day she's confronted by this man who says, hey, we knew each other in middle school and we were destined pairs. Basically, they did a kind of genetic test, I think, and they were established as soulmates, or I'm not sure they use the word soulmates, but destined pair, basically. And Ichi doesn't really remember this very much, but she basically starts hanging out with him and some other things start occurring to her. Once again, I want to say that Seven Seas is amazing at writing a synopsis that hooks you immediately and makes you want to buy the manga. Whoever is writing their synopses deserves a raise, because half of the manga I pick up from Seven Seas are because they write a fantastic synopsis, and then I go and read it, and while the synopsis is not wrong, it's just not what it focuses on. So I want to read the synopsis to you and then tell you what I feel like are the main aspects of this manga. So the tagline is, when genetics choose your partner, what could go wrong? Then it says, Isahaya Ichi is fed up with men, a woman navigating a world where she's underestimated at work because of her gender and sexually harassed. But when her former classmate, Masaki, unexpectedly shows up, everything changes. He claims to be the other half of her destined pair from a junior high school event called Gene Bride, where genetic information matched students into couples for a day. While Ichi barely remembers the event, Masaki's sudden reappearance sparks a journey of rediscovery and buried secrets. So that sounds completely fascinating to me. That seems like it's going to be heavy sci-fi with this weird soulmate-like thing, almost dystopian. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's what I'm getting out of it. However, this volume is not that. The sci-fi element is almost not even present in this volume, except for at the very end. And it's mostly just these two hanging out, getting to know each other, and her complaining about her misogynistic workplace and getting him to help her with some situations. So while I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, this manga definitely has an audience, but it is not me. I don't care about these two's relationship. It's not doing the sci-fi, like, destined pair thing in the way I wanted it to. So that's what I was thinking. And then I got to the end, and the sci-fi element definitely comes into play. And I was hooked, so I do have to read the second volume to figure out what's going on. I do think the art is very, very nice. Here's an okay one. I just really like the way that she's drawn. It's very pretty. So we'll just have to see what volume 2 does in terms of the balance between the sci-fi and the romance, because this volume was definitely, maybe not romance focused, but it was a lot of the relationship between these two characters and them getting to know each other. So I would rather it be more sci-fi. If it does that, I will keep reading. If it doesn't, then I'll just say it's not for me. I don't think this manga is bad. I really don't have any complaints about it other than the fact that it's just not what I was expecting. So yeah, I will continue this. I'm just not super excited to get to the next volume, but I did want to say, like, hey, have your expectations in place for this manga, because it's not quite what it seems from the synopsis. So lastly, let's just recap, and I'm going to rank them from the ones I'm least interested in continuing to ones I am most interested in continuing. Not necessarily how much I enjoyed the volume, but if I want to continue and if I don't want to continue. So yeah. So at the bottom has to be Rozen Maiden. Considering I couldn't even finish this volume, that means obviously I'm not continuing. Next up is Drifters. I almost didn't finish this volume either, so that has to go next. Next has to be Farewell, My Odin, because if you forced me to, I could continue this. I could read the other 2 volumes. I don't think I could force myself to continue Drifters or Rozen Maiden. So that one goes next. Next is Jean Bride, just because I didn't love this first volume, but it did hook me at the end, which sometimes if a manga waits until the end to try to hook me, I don't care, but this time it got me. So I'm interested to continue this, at least for one more volume. Next up is Pet Shop of Horrors. Definitely enjoyed this one. Not anything that like I need to read immediately, but it was fun. So that one goes next. Next we have The Climber, of course. I love sports manga, so I will continue reading The Climber because it is very, very highly acclaimed, and I did really like the first volume. But the one I was most interested in continuing for sure was Ultra Heaven. This just does a lot of psychological things that I love. It has a couple horror elements, weird reality things, so can't wait to read more of that. And yeah, here's my ranking. If you've read any of these manga and you have any thoughts about them, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, please leave your comments down below if you'd like to share. Otherwise, let me know what other new series are coming out that you think I should read. I can't guarantee I will like them. I usually only collect the things that I feel like I have a chance of enjoying, but I have an open mind sometimes. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!